The end is nearing, and this episode to me felt like the perfect continuation of the story as we approach the finale. Especially with the music from the Kiners, there were so many tense and stressful moments throughout the episode that hooked me on the story. Sometimes it's easier to think beyond tense moments, like knowing everyone survives or makes it out in the end with a win, but with how uncertain the ending of this Bad Batch series has been made, I never had something like that cross my mind. Really, the two big moments here were when Omega was trying to break out of the vault through the access hatch in her cell, and then the clones trying to dock with the Imperial shuttle at the end before it jumped into hyperspace. And in both scenarios my eyes were glued to the screen, because it wasn't like the series had to go one specific way to make sense with the series ending. I could have seen Omega being caught and reprimanded, or Echo being stuck on the ship alone as it travels to Tantus, and him somehow having to transmit the coordinates of Tantus to the rest of the crew once he arrives. In both cases, no matter which way the story went, it would have been an interesting development, so I really appreciate this episode in particular not being predictable. Starting from the top, the episode picks up on Tantus, and one subtle detail that I've really liked is how the planet looks to always change every time we go there, which is based on the season and lighting I assume, but it feels different every time rather than growing old and boring. There's a few new doctors that get more screen time in this episode besides Kar, one of which is named Dr. Skeldar, showing that Kar isn't the only one responsible for the vault, she just has the utmost authority on it. Omega is significantly older than the other children imprisoned here, which we get all of the names too. Sammy, Baron, Eva, and Jax. And everything with Omega in the vault really reminded me of the Padawan Lost arc in the Clone Wars Season 3, when Ahsoka is captured by Trandoshans for them to hunt for sport. And here she meets other younglings who by now have given up on any rescue, but Ahsoka inspires them to fight back and free themselves. In the Bad Batch, Omega fills the role of Ahsoka, similar to the other prisoners but older and having received much more training. Although the others are depressed and have given up on escaping, especially after Jax failed miserably earlier in the season, Omega arrives and is immediately planning her next escape from Tantus. Once she tells the others about how she's already escaped Tantus once, and she steals the tool from Dr. Kar's tray, they're inspired and get excited about the possibility of going home again. She has the whole plan laid out in her mind already and she's ready to get going. She wastes no time in attempting to break open the access hatch in her cell, which she's able to do and then fix before Dr. Skeldar arrives, and this was one of those tense moments in the episode. I wasn't sure if Omega was just scouting out the area or if she was actually going to try and escape now, but with Skeldar becoming suspicious of her and entering the vault, Omega has to put everything back to normal. I did find it interesting how Kar doesn't have complete control over the vault and the other scientists there. Skeldar specifically questions her decision to keep Omega there with the other children, given her past history of causing trouble on Tantus, a decision that will ultimately prove to be a mistake again if Omega is able to lead them all to freedom. Going over to the Bad Batch's side of the episode, I felt like this half of the story was equally as strong. After they're all dropped off on some barren planet, which looked to be the same one that Fennec rescued Omega from Cad Bane on once they were flying away, Echo arrives to provide a ship and some help to the crew on their next mission, and it was really nice with how much focus he got in this episode. A common critique of this season overall that I've seen is how much he and Rex have been sidelined, with really only the 2 episodes in the middle of the season being devoted to them. But here, Echo is pretty much the main character in this storyline, except for maybe Rampart. Echo arrives in a stolen Imperial shuttle, and while they're all en route, we learn why Tantus is so hidden. Hemlock has put safeguards in place that force any ship going there to first dock at Imperial Station 003 over Coruscant, where the coordinates are transmitted directly to the Nava computer. Thus, their mission in this episode is to go to the station, download the coordinates off of a Nava computer heading to Tantus, and then go and rescue Omega. The Batch stripped their armor to fit more in with the Empire, and it explains why the promo material had them all wearing black armor. We'll see if they repaint their armor at all before the end of the season, but that seems unlikely, which is sad because that means we'll be ending with them having stripped away their individuality and personality from their armor, becoming basic like the Imperial Stormtroopers compared to the soldiers of the Republic who were allowed to customize their armor. Rampart's snobby reaction to wearing the captain uniform also got a brief laugh out of me, because of how in character it is for him to care about something so small. A big question this episode is whether the Batch can trust Rampart at all to finish the mission and not turn them over, but I was never that against Rampart as a villain here because the Batch didn't exactly make it easy for him. They belittle him and talk down to him the entire episode, whereas if I was Rampart, I'd have actually considered turning them all over because they're just being a bunch of bullies toward him. Once they arrive at the station, Wrecker stays behind on the shuttle, which makes sense since he would have stuck out the most. He doesn't get much to do except when an Imperial officer shows up questioning about the shuttle's origins. As soon as they arrived, it felt like something had to go wrong in some form or fashion, but looking back, I'm surprised at how smooth it all went. Yeah, there was the issue with Echo turning off the sensors at the end to allow the shuttle to dock before hyperspace, which made for a really tense moment, but things never got entirely chaotic and the Batch was never discovered like I anticipated. Rampart was able to step right back into the role of an Imperial officer, and there was something comforting about seeing him normal again. Everything goes smoothly until they need an access card for the manifest, which they then just stun the worker immediately, which reminded me a bit of A New Hope on the Death Star. After learning that the coordinates don't transmit until after the ship departs, the batch ultimately decide to have Echo get on board and then allow the others to dock and hitch a ride to Tantus, which let Echo get a good amount of screen time for himself. Especially as he's sneaking his way onto the ship, we're reminded of just how capable and skilled of a soldier he is. Him also getting cussed out by the droid was a nice inclusion too. Echo is able to sneak on board through the droid chute, and after a very stressful ending, they're able to attach right before the ship leaves for Tantus. Even though it feels like a success for the batch, Echo is still going to be stuck on the Imperial ship when they arrive on Tantus, so it'll be interesting to see if that causes any issues when they arrive in the next episode. What did you think of this episode of The Bad Batch? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like the video, and subscribe for coverage of The Bad Batch as a new episode premieres every week, and remember to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you all for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.